All right, here we go. After a 3-0 week by Fuhrmy and a 2-0 by me, it was a great weekend last weekend with a little extra cash in our pocket. Fuhrmy, how do you feel?
Feeling good coming off the 3-0. I was working hard to get it, and it finally came through.
What was the biggest catch that you took away from the weekend? What are you thinking going forward here?
So I'm going to build off of a little bit of what I learned last week. I have some repeat teams in my picks this week, so I'm hoping for the same outcome, of course.
I was looking at mine, that Florida Atlantic game was horrible at the end. That was just such a bad beat. They were up 24-10 going into the fourth quarter and just blanked. We looked at that closing line when we put it in for you on that LSU Ole Miss game. It was 61. We're counting it as 59, absolutely, because if you could have got it in earlier, you would have. But I just want to get your opinion. How much point variance do you look for on a Saturday? If you see a line on a Wednesday, Thursday that you like, and then it starts to shift, what's your breaking point usually? Is it pen game to game, or are you looking for specific numbers like 3s and 4s or 2.5s? What's your breaking point on a number?
So I honestly don't pay too much attention to how it moves through the week because it honestly doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what the line is at game time. So, I like to lock in on the half points, of course. Preferably below 3, or I prefer 2.5 over 3 or 3.5, of course. But that's typically my strategy. I try not to pay too much attention to it earlier in the week, except for injuries, of course, as they can move with like injuries and weather. Some of those things that are sometimes not decided until later in the week.
Looking at your first game here, it seems that you're kind of going against one of your favorites, and you're going to take a road favorite. Why don't you give us some insight here, Fuhrmy? Get us started.
All right. So this was sort of what I was alluding to, watching a little bit of the Mississippi State-Florida game last week. So this week, I like Auburn minus 3.5 on the road at Mississippi State. Last week, I took Florida with the points at Mississippi State, and they won outright. But this game is really going to come down to how effective Mississippi State runs the ball. And really, they're very much a one-dimensional team ever since Nick Fitzgerald came back from his injury. Last week, they only had 202 total yards of offense. And Florida's weakness was stopping the run, and that's Mississippi State's strength. They only had, I think, 200 or 104 yards rushing last week. And you can't win at home, at night, only running the ball 104 yards against a weaker defensive team against the run. Auburn's defense is 8th in the FBS in rush yards per game and 3rd in points allowed. And they've played people like Southern Miss, Washington, and LSU, and they're still 3rd in points allowed defensively. So I think the whole game is going to come down to how effective Mississippi State runs the ball. I think Auburn's defense is better than Mississippi State's offense. Mississippi State hasn't even scored a touchdown in the last 6 quarters. So they're going to struggle this week, and I like Auburn to cover 3.5 on the road.
Is this a fade of Nick Fitzgerald?
I think it is, man. He cannot. He has not been effective passing the ball. He's under 50% now throwing. Last week he had 98 yards passing on 26 attempts, and he just looking at his QBR over the past year and a half, it's weak. It's barely over 100. And as an SEC quarterback and playing against those kinds of defenses, if your running game's not going, you're not going to battle back with those kind of passing numbers. So I think Auburn's defense is just too good for Mississippi State, and I just haven't been impressed the last 2 weeks with Mississippi State against at Kentucky and then at home against Florida, and they sort of got blown out both times to some degree.
I don't blame you. In that SEC football, it can be a little bit, it can be defensive at times. I think everyone's kind of forgetting the fact that Alabama's the outlier this year. I mean, they're just putting up points hand over fist. I think the biggest thing is that, you kind of look at Auburn collectively as a whole. You played against them last week against Southern Miss. You have a pretty good read on them. You played on Mississippi State a couple of times. Excuse me, you played against Auburn, but you played on Mississippi State and kind of have a good feel for it. I guess my big question is going forward, are you going to ever come back on Mississippi State, or does it really depend on a quarterback change here? Because I don't think Fitzgerald's numbers have had like over 100 yards or so. I mean, it's something bad. It's legitimately not good numbers for me.
Yeah, so I'll probably be back on Mississippi State later. I'm hoping they sort of get blown out this week by Auburn, and then the lines really start to shift in their favor. If they can face the right team, of course, they're going to cover, and it's probably going to be on the road when they're projected to lose by like 2 scores. Then I would ride Mississippi State because they stay in games. They typically don't get blown out, but at the same time, I don't like if they're down early. I just don't think their offense is built to come back. That's my fear, and that's another reason I like Auburn this week.
I was kind of looking at something very similar this week as I was going into conference play. There's a Thursday night game that I'm already locked in on. I love this Georgia State Troy game, and I think it's kind of similar in the fact that I think everyone's really high on Troy, and they get caught in these stigmas of this is a defensive team, this is an offensive team. The number is starting to show that. And the reason I asked you about those points is because the opening line was 57 on that over under. It dropped to 54. Georgia State has an NFL draft E on their team in Penny Hart at wide receiver. He's really good. Their quarterback is okay. I think his last name is Ellington. Dan Ellington, that's it. And then they have another running back, Seth Page, that kind of blew up against ULM. But in my spare time this afternoon when I got home, I was watching the ULM Troy game and then the Georgia State ULM game. It's like similar offenses. They kind of run like a zone read. I just think that at this point in the season, it's really good to move off of things that you're used to. Like I was really big on Troy's got a good defense. Georgia State has a good defense. Man, this goes under. But then just watching them play and as it evolves, I'm on this over for me. I'm starting to make shifts. Every week we talk, I become more educated on this. I just don't think the conference stigma should resonate further than it needs to. Like sometimes what you see is all it is. A team puts up 45 points, in this week, there's a good chance they can do it again. If they start hitting stride, especially when it comes to similar competition. And that's why looking at your second pick as we make a transition here. By the way, again, Fuhrmy was on Auburn -3.5, and for you guys on the go here on that Thursday, I like that over for Georgia State and Troy. But rolling into Saturday, here's a ranked team on the road, and they're not a favorite against the home team by almost a touchdown. What's going on here?
All right, so this one actually it made me think a lot before I sent or put this pick in. So this is going to be a fun one to watch. So the game we're talking here is Kentucky at Texas A&M, and I think the line is now -6. When I saw it earlier today, it was 5.5, and it's sort of been back and forth all week when I looked at when it opened and sort of the back and forth. But Kentucky's led by Benny Snell, who's obviously one of the most underrated players in the country. For those of you who haven't heard of him, you need to watch the SEC. But he is definitely under the radar. Kentucky ranks 6th in rush yards per game in the FBS. They average 263 yards a game rushing, which is pretty crazy for an SEC team. On the flip side, Texas A&M is 3rd in the FBS in rush yards per game allowed at 80 yards a game. So this is going to be a battle of two different strengths. Kentucky can run the ball. A&M shuts them down. And A&M's also played against Bama and Clemson and lost both games. And that being said, they're still only giving up 80 yards a game is pretty phenomenal. So what I like here, I like Texas A&M at home. They have the 12th man, as you probably know, and I think they're going to hand the Kentucky Wildcats their first loss by more than 6. Kentucky's been exceeding expectations on defense, but I don't think they've really faced a dual-threat quarterback like Kellen Mond, who can throw the ball effectively. They played against Fitzgerald, and he could not move the ball through the air, as we've just discussed. So I like home field advantage at night, and I just think it's going to be Kentucky's first loss of the year.
Is this Jimbo Fisher's, is this his ground? Is this his chance to kind of get one on the board here, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they've looked pretty good overall. I mean, they sort of got routed by Bama, but who hasn't? Last week, they should have blown out who they played. I think it was, I'm going to say Ole Miss. No, it wasn't Ole Miss. Who did they beat last week? It was much closer.
South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah. And they just couldn't put him away. I mean, they let him hang around. I watched the post-game interview with Jimbo, and he basically said what his team needs to do is learn how to put teams away. They play to the level of their competition a lot, and that's sort of proven true when they hung around and really had a chance to beat Clemson down at the end of the game. But I think they do a great job managing clock, and this is going to be a game where Jimbo sort of takes the next step and puts Texas A&M on the map as an SEC West, at least contender. They're 1-1 in the SEC right now.
I don't know, Fuhrmy. That seems like it's... If this game was at Kentucky, what would the line be? Would it be Kentucky minus... Would it be a pick'em? You know what I mean? Are we giving 3 points for home field, and then... I mean,
I bet it's close to a pick'em if they're at home. Maybe even A&M is favored, still by like 2 or 3.
You think the atmosphere is going to be too much for Kentucky?
I do, and I just think Texas A&M's defense is gonna. I think they can contain the run, and if they get on the board early, Texas A&M, Kentucky is not a good passing team. Their quarterback has 2 touchdowns, 5 picks this year. So, and they played 5 games. So, I mean, they're not moving the ball through the air, and I guess you don't have to when you can run effectively as they do. But they're going to learn a lot about their team this week if Texas A&M can contain Snell.
Wow. You know, I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to take that. I like the Auburn game better, even though it's a road favorite. You know, I keep thinking about this ground and pound mentality and what it can mean for teams. You know, and I was looking at, but you know me, all I'm doing is taking overs. I was looking at Tulane and Cincinnati, and I was looking at their non-conference schedules, and I just don't know why this line is so low. You know, and now I'm looking at that. And by the way, that Texas A&M is still sitting at 5.5, so we'll definitely give you that. But I'm even looking at that over under, and that's dropping. And I'm like, I don't have any faith in Kentucky, but they can kind of be surprising. You know what I mean? Like that. I mean, they have played well this year. Before I get into my pick about Tulane and Cincinnati, tell me what Kentucky would have to do to win the game.
Run the ball effectively, and that is really what it's going to come down to. They average 263 yards a game rushing. Texas A&M gives up 81 yards a game. So these two styles completely, it's going to come down to the trenches on when Kentucky has the ball. If they don't at least run for $150 to 175 yards, I don't think they even have a chance.
Okay.
Like they could lose by multiple scores.
Okay. I'll hit you up on that. Look, I'm going to go with 2 conflicting styles as well. I'm going to take that over 48 for Tulane and Cincinnati. Another 3-point drop, went from 51 to 48. It's starting to work its way back up a little bit. Look, Tulane runs a pretty fast tempo on their option. It's very similar. Again, it's kind of like Georgia Southern last week, where they kind of run this like the shifty, almost New Mexico style pistol option. And Cincinnati's like 4-0 or something like that, or 5-0. There's something fierce right now. And I think they're putting points on the board well. And I'm not going to go into specifics about guys. I know that Tulane's quarterback was out of the game a little bit with cramps, but they scored 5 rushing touchdowns without him. The backup will do fine in this offense if it comes to that. It's at Cincinnati. It's a noon game. Tulane coming off a big win against Memphis. Cincinnati truly hasn't been tested. I think this game gets out of hand early. I think this is one of those ones where it may go over in the first half or in the third quarter, which are like my favorite overs. It's very similar to the Georgia Tech Bowling Green. Remember how we were watching the updates on that? And I'm like, look, they're just going to keep going. Like everyone's like, oh, they run the ball. They're going to take a lot of time. No, they're going to get moving. So go ahead.
They couldn't be stopped either.
Oh, they couldn't be stopped. Oh, Georgia Tech couldn't be stopped last week. I don't think Tulane's going to get stopped. I think they had a pretty good non-conference schedule when I look at it. Give me 1 second here. I'm flipping through. I'll get to it. I know they played Ohio State, which was undoubtedly a tough game, and they got smoked. But even Ohio State was looking towards the next week for that one, so they didn't really, they didn't really overextend themselves. They played Wake Forest, who was pretty tough, and they're okay. They're not that great, but UAB, who has not had the best year, but they're still 3-1. Like statistically, they haven't had the best year, but they're still 3-1. And then they beat a pretty good Memphis team, who's struggled against Navy. But I guess they haven't really beat anyone that great, I guess. But I'll take the points. I think the tempo is going to pick up in this game, and I think that there's no doubt in my mind this thing is 28-24. So give me the over the whole way, which, for as low of a total that is, that's not even anywhere near what I would have ever have thought you would take in your last pick for an over, especially these two teams. So, Fuhrmy, I have to call you on the carpet, and you have to justify this over.
That's fine, and I actually like this one a lot, believe it or not. So, LSU at Florida right now, the line's at 43.5. Like you said, I like the over. So, all the chatter in this game is going to be about the two defenses, and rightfully so. They're both top 12 defenses. Florida's tied for the nation lead in takeaways, and they've only given up 2 touchdowns in the red zone out of 8 tries. So that's pretty great numbers. But here's my justification. So big playmaking defenses also lead to points. Both of these teams turn turnovers into points, whether it be on the defensive side of the ball or positive field position. And they both play aggressive man coverage in the secondary. So if the quarterbacks can get a little time up front, you're going to see a lot of shots downfield to single coverage, and I think a couple of them connect. And just one other stat, offensively, both of these teams are underrated, but because of how good their defenses are. So Florida averages 35 points a game. LSU averages 34, both in the top 50. I know that's like crazy good, but they're not bad offenses. So I just think this game's going to be back and forth. I don't want to pick a winner. I think the line right now is like Florida's getting like 1.5 or something, maybe 2. But I like it to be a little bit high scoring. I'm not going to say it's going to be a shootout, but I can easily see this game in the mid-20s, 27-24, something like that.
Wow, that's way over.
Easy cover. But yeah, even
you're not worried about LSU looking ahead to Georgia?
I hope they do as a Gator fan. But if they look ahead, that's going to be benefiting Florida and getting points, which is probably where the biggest risk of scoring is going to come from, and that's on the Florida offensive side of the ball. So if they look ahead, I think that even benefits this side of the bet. And I think back just a week ago, a lot of people on the Penn State-Ohio State over because they were on the two highest scoring offenses.
I wasn't. You were on the bus when I said no.
Yep. But a lot of people were. And it's because of the offensive stats. This is on the same side of the coin. Defenses get all the credit. A lot of people are probably going to be on the under. And these offenses are not bad. There's a reason LSU's in the top 10. So I like the over. 43.5 is a low number, I feel.
Now, you can almost double that number for my final pick, and I'm not going to give a lot of insight into this because I just think this is one of those ones I looked at. I've been playing Bowling Green overs for a couple weeks now, and they're playing Toledo, and in Toledo, in the Glass Bowl, last year, 66-37 Toledo. I see something very, very similar. They got embarrassed a couple weeks ago by Fresno State. It was not pretty. I'm actually pulling up the actual numbers. It was on the last Saturday, 49-27. Oh, that's just a pounding. And Toledo's good for that. If you've ever followed them and how many points they put up, everyone kind of gets on the high horse and then they kind of sell them. You know what I mean? Like the number will get too high and it's time to take an over. The over on this game, the Toledo-Fresno State, was 61, and Fresno State put up almost a 50 hanger on them. They didn't even try in the fourth quarter. It was 49 to it was 49-13 in the fourth quarter. There's nothing to do other than run the clock out and put in the second guys. So I think Toledo comes home, makes a statement. I might look at a first half over with this as well. I've already put it in at 72. If that number goes up a little bit more, and that first half over kind of splits somewhere around maybe 35 or 36, I would look to take a first half over because I think Toledo is good for at least 31 in the first half, and Bowling Green will get their points. They'll put 10 in the first half, maybe 14, and then in the second half when the second teamers come in, they'll hang a 24. But I think Bowling Green could potentially cover at least 85% of this number on their own. Have you started coming with me on the small ball, Fuhrmy? I know you love that SEC, but are you watching these games?
I am watching the games. I absolutely am. I'm just not looking into them as deeply as you are, of course.
It's only a problem when you're losing. Look, you're sitting at 10-5. I was hoping, oh man, Fuhrmy, I was hoping so bad we both could have that 3-0 week and celebrate, but stupid FAU. That was going on while Shout was going on. You know how hard that is to not get excited for the song Shout, you know?
Yeah, that was towards the end of the wedding.
Oh, I was just so disappointed. But I was happy for you. Sitting at 10-5. I'm sitting at 6-9. I would love a 3-0. Get me back to 500. I want you to build that. I'd love you to go back to back. You're 5-1 in the last 2 weeks. If you could go 8-1 in 3 weeks, buddy. For all the people who are not listening but should be, they need to click like, share, and subscribe because you're hanging some good numbers. But anything off the board that has your attention, I see you got 3 games you liked. Just pick 2 if you want.
All right. So I like West Virginia to cover, or the over in the Kansas-West Virginia game.
Oh, I will disagree with you on that.
You do or don't?
I disagree. I think Kansas. Wait, you're saying just the over, right?
Over 61.
Okay,
yes.
I'll take friendly. I'll take Kansas plus 29.5. I won't put money on it, but I think this is a total letdown week for the Mountaineers. I do.
At home? At home.
Yes, this is a notorious West Virginia thing. My sisters went there, we watched them. This is so West Virginia. I think they'll win the game. I just think this is 31-10. Get off the field and get out of here.
Wow.
Yep.
I think they're not going to. I don't think that mentality is there because Greer's such a Heisman candidate right now. I think they're going to keep trying to fill it up for him. He has 17 touchdowns, 3 picks this year, so he's going to keep the foot on the pedal.
I just don't see it. I think Kansas has a better defense than what they're given credit for. I saw, I understand they're not wowing anyone, and yeah, they got blown up by Oklahoma State, but I just respectfully disagree. I like I said, I wouldn't put money on it, but give me Kansas. Let's see if the Mountaineers prove me wrong and hang a 35 burger on them. 2 other big games here I see, Fuhrmy. Which one do you like better?
So I like the sleeper one a little bit better, which is Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. I'll take Virginia Tech +7 with their backup quarterback.
Wow.
I think it's going to be a very close game, and I know Virginia Tech at home at night is a dangerous place to play.
Oh, yeah. That Enter Sandman is awesome when they come into that, for sure.
I know. So I like Virginia Tech to stay within 7, so I would take them plus the points.
I like it. Listen, Fuhrmy, that's some interesting picks. I was actually struggling this week. I may go on you with that over late with that LSU Florida game. We'll have to see and how things are going for the weekend here. Anything coming up, Fuhrmy, or are we just going to take it easy for once?
I think we're going to take it easy.
I like it.
Actually, I have a 10-mile race that I have to run on Sunday.
How many miles?
10.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
So that's happening Sunday morning.
Well, that's the penance you have to pay for when we played flag football and you got me killed all the time. So, go out there and get after it, because I assure you that will be the last thing that I would do. Though I am doing hot yoga now, just as a random thing. So I got.
Wow, that is random.
Yeah, it feels good. I'm not gonna lie. I'd rather do that than run, but it humbles you. Like I got broke, like 2 Sundays ago. I got totally broke. Like this.
Well, the big thing now is goat yoga, isn't it?
I don't know, but my wife wanted me to go. It was like 110 degrees, and it was. I mean, I was like, I've got a pretty long tenure in coaching and competing in wrestling, and I was nothing to write home to mom about, but I was still in the sport, and the Zen, like, hey, smell the flowers and everything's wonderful in the world yoga instructor broke me at about 9:45 2 Sundays ago when I had my leg up in the air over my head and I was squatting and my hamstrings and calves and everything were cramping. It was a show, man. And there's like these like middle-aged women who've been doing it for like months now, and I didn't know I was in an advanced class. Oh man, I was getting crushed. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible.
Well,
just run. Just leave it at that. Listen, Gambler on the go. Fuhrmy's going Auburn -3.5, Texas A&M -5.5, and over 43 for LSU and Florida. I will be taking over for Toledo and Bowling Green at 72, over 48 for Tulane and Cincinnati, and then over on Thursday night, 54 for Georgia State and Troy. Fuhrmy, super excited to have you back. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to close it out, and then I'll talk to you.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, the audio on this may be a little bit off, and I apologize. I'll get this fixed in the next 7 days. It's been crazy since we came back. But the fact is whether or not the audio is off or on, Fuhrmy and I are hitting our stride. So let's see if I can get me to 500, and let's get Fuhrmy a little bit closer to way, way over 60% for the year. Everyone have a safe week. Enjoy your weekend, and enjoy NCAA Week 6.